We hiked in late to Pine Ridge Lookout because the forecast promised a clear window between storms. By 11:38 p.m., our tent was staked on the lee side of the hill, the fire tower a black ladder above us. The county website said it was decommissioned. No power, no night staff. The wind ran the guy lines like harp strings until the gusts settled to a steady push. At 12:07 a.m., a square of yellow appeared in the top cab. Not the moon, an interior light, warm and even, like a kitchen bulb. Jess said, "Maybe a caretaker?" And I started to answer before remembering the sign at the trailhead. Staffed May through Aug only. I called out and the sound snapped off the girders like chalk. No steps on the stairs. No door squeak. I took a photo from the vestibule and checked it. The windows glowed and a coil spring chair cast a crisp shadow on the floorboards. My phone insisted ISO 50, 160, no flash, too clean for the night we were standing in. At 12:11, something climbed, not weight but rhythm. 1, 2, 3, pause. The ladder cage never rattled. The dog pricked his ears, then tucked his nose under his tail. I clicked record on the voice memo and called again. Wind answered with a low vowel that had no source. Jess pointed to the guy wire shadow across the grass. It ran right to left like a sundial arm. When the cab light brightened, the shadow did not change. Light without angles. At 12:19, a faint buzzing climbed into the air like a transformer waking. The cab light held. I opened my compass app. The needle wandered and stuck, pointing straight at the tower. I took a second photo just as the bulb winked once and steadied. My screen showed 2 images with the same timestamp, but the second had the chair's shadow pointing a different way than the guy wire said it should. Almost warm. At 12:27 a.m., we climbed to the first landing to check for a ranger. The metal felt dry where rain should have glazed it. Halfway up, the cab light went out like a breath. Our headlamps made a snow of wind-blown mist. The top windows showed only black in our reflections. I tried the cab door. It was padlocked, old brass with smooth numbers. Through the glass, the chair sat where the photo showed it, but the floor held dust like no one had walked since fall. I slid my phone under the gap and clicked a blind shot. The screen glowed with nothing but floorboards. We stood there too long, hearing nothing. Then the buzzing returned, thin as a mosquito. My phone in airplane mode showed a gray bar, emergency calls only. I took the same photo again, same framing, and this time the cab looked lit, the chair sharp, the window trim catching a warm edge, our headlamps reflected dark. We backed down the stairs, and the wind pushed us the last steps. At the tent, I checked both pictures. The EXIF data matched. Same timestamp, same lens, same exposure. Only the hertz field in the audio note changed from 0 to 60.00 during the dark shot. Morning brought a ranger to fix a washout at the trailhead. I showed him the photos. He reached into the truck and pulled a laminated sheet that said, "Lookout power disconnected, 2009, and a diagram of the removed breaker. He shrugged. Folks still call us about that light when storms are close. Back home, I overlaid the photos. The chair shadow rotated 8 degrees between files stamped identical. When thunderheads stack, I lay them edge to edge. For a blink, the room brightens, like the cab borrows power from the air. I keep the originals in a dry bag, proof for when memories wobble at home. The Forest Service site called it a primitive group camp, which meant a rain shelter and a set of bare cables strung between 2 poles. We reached Old Mill Flats at 10:41 p.m., steam lifting from the road as the storm cooled. Dinner was ramen, and the kind of tired that makes you laugh too hard at nothing. At 11:18, I hauled our food bag to the pulley, clipped the carabiner, and walked the line hand over hand until the sack hung chest high. Jess tugged the other rope to balance it. The red tag on that line read, "Property of District 3. We tied off the ends and went to the shelter to listen to the roof ping. Midnight came. and something squealed in the dark. Not an animal, metal, a slow turn of dry pulley sheaves. Our bag rose a foot, then settled. Jess asked if I pulled the wrong side. I hadn't moved. At 12:06 a.m., the squeal returned. 1, 2, 3 turns, and the bag climbed again, inches at a time the way a careful person tests weight. I aimed my headlamp to see if wind had blown the free end. Both knots were tight. We watched the other rope, the District 3 line, twitch like someone adjusting a belt. I set the GoPro on time-lapse against a pillar, framing both poles and the hanging bag. The rain softened and the creek took over the soundscape. At 12:33, the pulley sang once more and stopped. The bag now hung at least 2 feet higher, its shadow floating over the shelter floor. I walked under and smelled cinnamon and damp nylon. The bag had opened slightly. A single almond lay on the concrete where there had been none. The dog nosed it and sneezed. We tightened the roll top and retied both ends, then sat back counting to see if the unseen hand kept time. We heard one persistent drip find a pan, counted to 12, and heard it again. Over and over. At 12:41, the GoPro's tiny red LED winked and the shelter felt like a stage. The pulley squealed once more, a vowel. I didn't step forward. I kept my light low on the posts to catch anything crossing. The District 3 rope moved without the bag descending, a slack loop feeding itself over the beam like ribbon. At 12:47, the bag eased upward another inch, then stopped. I wrote the time in grease pencil on the shelter post. The creek never changed pitch. Wind never touched our tarp. When the storm slid east, crickets started, and the cables went still. Dawn let us see the mess we expected, and didn't. The bag was sealed, the knots hard. On the concrete under it, 5 almonds sat in a long arc like they'd been placed from a palm. I climbed the pole ladder and checked the beams. No prints, no claw scraps, only a smear of grease that smelled like old coins. We broke camp. Before leaving, I pulled the SD card. The time-lapse showed our bag hang low, pulse once, then rise at 12:06, 12:33, and 12:41, each time with no person or animal. On the third lift, a metal ring near the far post rotated a quarter turn by itself and stopped, the almond arc below still clean. At the ranger station, the clerk laughed until I showed the clip. He brought a mechanic who squinted, then pointed at my still of the ring. "That tag?" he said. "District 3 hasn't used those since 1995. They replaced those with self-lockers." He wrote the older model number and told us to turn it in if we found one. I sent the footage anyway. The reply came a week later. System retired, no inversion. We don't hang food from cables now. We cook and eat far from the tent and stack our almonds in a long line on purpose, just to see if anyone corrects our spacing when the creek gets loud.